A system, by definition, is a set of connected things or parts forming a complex whole in particular. That's a website, dictionary.com. Dictionary.com also says a protocol is an established code of procedure or behavior in any group, organization, or situation. Now, a management system is a documented, tested step-by-step method aimed at smoothing functioning through standard practices. Systems became well known in the franchise industry. McDonald's, Starbucks. There's a Starbucks cup right there. Would you turn it sideways and look at the little check marks that they've put on it? And you'll see that they've put your order on the side. That's their system to where, without having to use anything but that little piece of paper, they've got something that they can pass the thing on down the line and give you consistency throughout. McDonald's is famous for being able to give consistency where even though it's just a hamburger, you know wherever you go, you're going to get the same quality any place at the same price. And you don't see that in some restaurants because they don't use their systems as well. For offices that have developed their own systems, in dental offices, it's not whether you develop them, it's whether you use them. And sometimes you have to find the right employees that are willing to use the systems as well. Ever heard of a system failure before? Any Matrix fans in the group? Did you recognize this clip? Yeah. System failure. You set up all this and it doesn't get followed. But system failures, if you work your systems, are way better than it's your fault you didn't do it right. Because usually it's that there wasn't the proper training, there weren't the proper steps to be able to go through. So doctors, if you didn't set up the system, it's usually not the employee's fault, it's a system failure. And we're going to talk about how to be able to work around these. That would be a definition of system failures to Southern Baptists. It's the right territory for that, isn't it? So, this is a model of an industrial type of how to be able to look at a system failure. I'm not going to go through every one of those boxes. The point is to evaluate when a system goes bad. If something's going wrong, you look at each step of the system that you've got set up and you figure out what missing piece is not working. And one of the magics about systems is you can not only do that, but you can look at systems from the back end after you do something, and you can see, even if it seems to be working, how you can be able to tweak the system to make it better. And we're going to talk about things like that today, okay?
Slow it down, nice and slow, right down the center line. This is picture perfect.
That's beautiful.
Beautiful, beautiful job. Beautiful job.
That's an incredible pilot.
That's all damage. I bet those engines are not adversely impacted. Did you notice how he cutted those tops? Those tops stumped. And
I'm told there's two types of pilots. Pilots that have landed with their gear up and pilots that will land with their gear up. That's why pilots do all the simulators. That's why they use the checklists, is for that life and death situation, they know how to be able to handle it before it happens. Excellent read. I strongly recommend the book by Atul Gawande called Checklist Manifesto. I developed the systems that I use in dentistry before I read this book, and then I went back and I drastically changed what I did because this has better ideas on what works better. Awande is the surgeon that worked with the World Health Organization and is largely responsible for the systems that are used in ORs and ERs, the timeouts that you see, the put a mark on the limb that's going to be worked on or the body part to make sure that they don't work on the wrong side, things like that. Gawande says in all learned occupations have a definition of professionalism, a code of conduct. It's where they spell out their ideals and duties The codes are sometimes stated, sometimes just understood, but they have at least 3 common elements: an expectation of selflessness, that we accept responsibility for others; an expectation of skill, that we aim for excellence in our knowledge and expertise; and an expectation of trustworthiness. Would you all agree we've got that covered already for dentistry? Sure. Aviators, however, add a 4th expectation: discipline. Discipline in following product procedure and functioning with others. This is the concept almost entirely outside the lexicon of other professionals. He goes on and says discipline's harder than trustworthiness or in skill, and perhaps even than selflessness. We're by nature flawed and inconstant creatures. This is why aviation required institutions to make discipline a norm. Lastly, he says, to be sure, checklists must not become ossified mandates that hinder rather than help. Even the simplest requires frequent revisiting and ongoing refinement. I'm going to repeat that again. If you decide to take up what I'm going to show you, it's going to be something that you got to keep working on. Even the simplest checklist requires frequent revisiting and ongoing refinement. In the end, a checklist is only an aid. If it doesn't aid, it's not right. But if it does, you must be able to embrace the possibility. JEDA recognized this, and they published it for us in 2010. The chief author of the article is a dentist that is also an aviator. He flies commercial flights and practices dentistry part-time. He said, in medical settings, use of the checklist has been shown to improve safety, with post-op complications and death rates reduced as much as 36%. And the thing I hear most when I see that comment is, but we don't do that many things that put our patients that much at risk. And I do sedation, that applies for me big time. But for you, you're right, it doesn't put the patient at much risk of death. But you do see mistakes that you do, and you see little things that if you would consider using the systems and checklists, it will make your patient's procedure go better, and it will make your day less stressful and improve your productivity and your bottom line. So what can systems do for your practice? They can simplify and organize you. They can decrease errors. For your team, how many staff in here today? Hold them high for me, would you please? So how many doctors in the room then? Mostly doctors, okay. So and how many of you doctors have staff here? Most of you are by yourself. So what you say to your team is, if you use the system, it's got your back, because if you followed along, there's no way that you forget something. There's no way somebody's going to blame you for something. If something goes wrong, it's a system failure, and we figure out what went wrong and we fix it. And that's a terrific thing, to be able to change your mindset as an employer, as a supervisor with the people that you're working with. It changes the dynamic to where instead of being somebody over them, you're working with them to get better results. And that is a better situation to work with, trust me, because I've done it both ways. Ask me how I know. I've seen that it increases the number of patients coming in your door because you can work more efficiently. Your patients see these people get along. There's not... One of the biggest things that you see in the difference between a well-run business, restaurant, let's say, for example, and a poor one, is consistency. So if you go in McDonald's, you know you're going to get consistency every time. If you go in a 5-star restaurant and one visit you get the most fabulous meal and fabulous service, you get 5-star service and you're paying for it, and then you go back and you don't get that same consistency, but it was still darn good, but you didn't get as good as you had, you judge them badly because you didn't have that consistency. And the systems give you that consistency. That's how you increase the number of patients coming in your door. So in setting up for procedures for consistency and efficiency, If you use checklists, you can be more efficient, you can improve training. You've got documentations that, especially if you're doing a newer procedure, can make it flow more easily, more routinely. We use tubs and trays, and everything that we do, we upload a photo of the tray, of the tub, of the instruments that are not used very often, to where it's easy to find things and it's easy for a new team member in my office to be able to learn. I've got one office in Fresno, California that uses this concept with StreamDent. They have 19 operatories, and they love the concept. And you know with 19 ops that they have to go through some different people, and they can train them quickly and efficiently. So with what we do with a setup, we've got a column in the middle on what you bring in the op. We've got a column on the left on what to do to set up the room, what to do to go over the consent forms, what to do to place the topical, etc. I have my team members, my dental assistants, put burrs in the handpieces ahead of time. They've got the list over there of what I want them to put in, and they've got the burr block labeled so that they know what to put in. And if on the, I've treatment planned an MODBLXYZ filling on the deep thing that I'm worried about and I want to get to, and I know it's possible that I might hit a pulp. And if I hit the pulp, you know you expect to have to leave the room and wait for 10 or 15 minutes while they set up the room for endo, right? In my office, I don't leave the room because they click on a link on the procedure, and it's got a system that's the same thing that they set up for endo, but we've set up the instruments and they bring them in a certain order that I'm going to use them in. So one assistant stays with me, the other assistant brings these things in as fast as they can reasonably, but I can be able to keep doing things on getting the file in there and getting my working length while they're setting up the obtura, that kind of stuff that we're going to be doing later in the appointment. That's an example of where we've used systems to increase the efficiency. We use checklists on what to do for opening the office, and if we're doing it in more than one room, we don't use the iPads or the PCs for the checklist. We use papers, and same thing for the end of the day. I've given you printouts that show what we do with those systems, so if you'd like to develop them, you can easily do them, but we're doing them with paper because we're doing the same thing in several rooms and it's easier to keep track of what you've got to do. Anything that we do is not going to be perfect. Perfection is a myth. For decades, I was a perfectionist, and I made myself and the people around me miserable. I encourage you to let go of the perfection, realize that embrace that success is messy, and allow yourself to make mistakes and learn from it. And thank you so much for being a terrific audience. It is 25 seconds till 5, and come up and ask me questions if you've got them. Thank you so much.